Hi guys, this is the ASMR Nerd, and today's video will be the long overdue continuation of our soft-spoken reading of Martin the Warrior, A Tale of Redwall by Brian Jacques. If you haven't listened to the previous chapters that we've read, I strongly suggest that you start at the beginning and work your way up to where we are now, which is chapter 3. But for a quick synopsis, just to jog the memory of those who haven't watched for a while, we've met Martin the Warrior, the titular mouse, who is a prisoner of Badrang the Stoat in his imposing fortress of Marshank. Martin the Warrior's been a prisoner for much of his life, and he's currently strung up on the battlements for insubordination, for defying Badrang and his captains. And he's been left up on the battlements in a storm to die, and if not in the storm, to get eaten by seabirds in the morning. Meanwhile, on the outside of the fortress, a young mouse maid and her mole friend, Rose and Grum of Noonvale, are searching for Rose's younger brother, Brome, who's left Noonvale and has gone missing. And they suspect that he's being held prisoner within the fortress of Marshank. So let's continue. Chapter 3. Dawn came pearly grey, shot with shafts of peach and dusky pink, as the sun broke the eastern horizon in the wake of the night storm. The sea was a dim shade of oily turquoise, with cream-crested waves in the middle distance. Badrang the tyrant had his carved throne chair brought out to the courtyard, where he could watch the fun. Gurd the rat and Skullrag the fox stood along with two weasels called Lumpback and Stiffier, awaiting orders as the tyrant Stoat pointed to Martin's limp figure with his sword. "He looks strong enough to have lived through a bit of wind and rain. Gurd, go and wake the sleeping beauty. When he's conscious and wriggling about, the birds will soon spot him." Gurd sniggered as he looked up at the circling seabirds that were beginning to mass above the fortress. "Aye, lord, that lot look in good appetite as usual, eh?" Badrang nodded. "Never knew a gannet that wasn't. Ho there, Hisk, don't send the slaves to the quarry yet. Parade 'em out here where they can see the sentence being carried out. It'll show 'em what happens to any beast who puts a paw wrong in my fortress." Gurd slapped Martin around the face with a wet piece of rag until the young mouse revived. He held a beaker of fresh water to the captive's lips, chuckling as the prisoner drank greedily. "That's the stuff. Drink up now, mouse. Those seabirds will soon be down for breakfast. Look at 'em, big uns, ain't they? Great pointed beaks they've got, good as a knife for ripping and tearing. They'll enjoy you." Martin managed to spit the last of the water full into Gurud's face. The rat backed off, spluttering nastily. "Tough, eh? Well, I hope they takes your eyes first." Chancing a glance upwards, Martin could see a great gannet preparing to dive. Two other grey gulls were beginning to swoop low, and others rushed to join them in the descent for food. His paws were swollen by the wet ropes that held him tightly. He struggled wildly, shutting his eyes tight after Gurud's cruel remark. All eyes were on Martin now. The horrified slaves, the gloating horde of Badrang, the hungry seabirds, plus 2 other pairs. Rose and Grum were crouched behind a stony outcrop on the beach, the young mousemaid watching very carefully as she placed a paw across her throat and took a deep breath. The birds wheeled and dived lower towards the struggling figure bound between the posts on the wall top. Grum nudged his friend urgently. "How do hasten and hurry, missy. They birds be going to peck Martha to death, or I can look no more." Grum closed his eyes tight as the seabirds dived for the kill. Badrang had forgotten to scan the seaward horizon that day, preoccupied as he was with Martin's death sentence. A sail appeared 2 points north on the eastern horizon. It was a great, green, single-masted craft, practically invisible against the sea because of its camouflaged coloring. 3 banks of oars protruded to port and starboard, one atop the other, giving it the appearance of a monstrous insect crawling over the waves. It was Badrang's old partner in murder and treachery upon the high seas, a stoat like himself. Captain Clog of the great ship Sea Scarab. Clog was a villainous sight, an enormously fat stoat, dressed in stained and tawdry silks, wearing a massive pair of carved wooden clogs. Every part of his fur, wherever possible, was plaited and braided, beard, eyebrows, mustache, all over his gargantuan body. Plaits and braids stuck out of his ragged sleeve frills, spilled through rents in his shirt, coat, and pantaloons, even curled over the tops of the oversized clogs. He gnawed on a half-dead lobster as he slurped seaweed grog from a flagon, belching aloud and spitting shell fragments everywhere. Throwing back his tousled head, he roared up at the lookout, a ferret in the crow's nest. "Boggs! Any shape of land out there yet, matey?" The keen-eyed Boggs peered into the distance. "No, Cap'n, nary a glimmer o'... Wait! Aye! Land ahoy!" The lobster tail fell from Clog's open mouth to disappear down his shirt front. "Ha ha! I knowed it. Where away, Boggs, you old bile dog?" 2 points south, Cap'n. Aye, and there be a little lump sticking up, either a cliff or some building." Clog gurgled happily. Drawing a broad cutlass from his sash, he began honing it on the sole of his left clog. "Bring her about 2 points, Grouch. If Badrang ain't there, I'll eat me clogs on me oath, I will. Gritter, tell the crew to put some vinegar in their oar strokes. Hurry now, matey. With this wind in our sails and a flowing sea, we'll make landfall soon. Won't me old messmate Badrang be pleased to see his great Uncle Clog again after all this time?" At the wheel, Grouch gave a villainous cackle. "Please just say, Captain, I reckon Badrang will pop his cork." Clog flung the empty grog bottle over the side. "And if he don't, I'll pop it for him." Like a great green bird of ill omen, the sea scarab came about and headed for Marshank, as Clog mused aloud to himself. "If I knows Badrang, he'll have slaves aplenty, too many for one beast to own. An old matey like him won't begrudge enough fine slaves to row the sea scarab. Else teeth, I should say not. Poor lubber like me without a single slave to me vessel asides, 'tain't fitting for corsairs and sea rats to row their own craft. So I'll just nip in nicely and ask him handsome like to fit us out with rowing beasts. Badrang'll give 'em to me, he's a nice cove. And what if he don't? Why then I'll just slit his gizzard and take him. I'll use his skull as me figurehead and feed the rest of 'em to the fishes. Only fair, ain't it, Grouch?" Both pirates burst out laughing at the joke. Clog liked a joke, but he was joking in deadly earnest this time. He hated Badrang. The seabirds came diving in voraciously at Martin's unprotected body. They were within a hair's breadth of his head when a wild, ear-splitting screech, halfway between a whistle and a cry, rent the morning air. Immediately, the scavenging birds swooped away and zoomed high into the air, shrilling anxiously and wheeling about willy-nilly. Another loud screech followed, and the gulls and gannets milled about high above Martin, some of them bumping into each other in their apparent confusion. Badrang gaped upwards in amazement. "What's the matter with him? Why aren't they tearing him apart?" A further screech followed, even louder and more angry-sounding than the former two. This time, the seabirds sheered off sharply and dispersed. The tyrant stoat was furious. "What in the name of Hellgates is going on?" A ferret called Bluehide, who had lived in the far north, called out as he scratched his ears in puzzlement. "Oh, that's the hunting cry of a great eagle. I've heard it before." Gurrid shoved him scornfully. "Garn, there ain't no great eagles on this coast." A small, venturesome kittiwake, who had just arrived on the scene, took a swift dive at Martin. The screech rang out harsh and swift. The frightened kittiwake took off like a skyrocket. Bluehide shrugged, eyeing Gurrid in a patronizing manner. "That's a great eagle's hunting cry. I'd stake me oath on it." The rat raised his spear butt threateningly. "Listen, Addlebrain, I've said there ain't no Gurrid, stow the gab and get over here." The rat broke off his argument with the ferret and scuttled across to Badrang's side. The tyrant scowled as he glowered at the clear blue sky. "Never mind what it is. There's something about that scaring the seabirds witless. We'll have to tempt them down onto the mouse with a bait they can't resist. Bring a dead fish from the cookhouse." Hurriedly, the fish was brought to Badrang. He took his sword and cut the cord holding the weasel Lumpback's ragged kilt. There was a snigger from the slaves as Lumpback stood grinning sheepishly with his only garment draped about his footpaws on the ground. Ignoring the weasel's plight, Badrang tossed the cord to Gurrid. "Here, tie the fish to this and hang it round the mouse's neck. That'll bring the hungry seabirds to feed, eagle or no eagle." From their hiding place on the shore, Rose scanned the sky. It was clear and free of seabirds. "Thank goodness I won't have to do the eagle call again, Grum. It was beginning to strain my throat."
"Hur," the mole chuckled. "I'd be glad too, Mizzy. 'Twere a very frightening sound. I didn't like it one little bit, no."
Grum peeked over the rocky outcrop at Martin on the wall top.
"Mizzy Roser, hearken, what be they villains doing now to Marthin, or a doing to Marthin?"
The mousemaid began twirling her loaded sling. "I don't know, but whatever it is, we'll have to stop them." Gurrid was trying to get the cord noose that held the fish over Martin's head, but the young mouse was ducking and struggling wildly. The rat was losing his temper.
"Hold still, mouse, or I'll pin this fish to you with me spear point."
Thwack! Gurrid dropped the fish with an agonized yelp as the slingstone bounced off his paw. Badrang did not see the stone. All he saw was Gurrid dropping the fish and hopping about, sucking on his paw. The tyrant stood up, knocking his throne chair backwards as he yelled at the unfortunate rat. "Stop playing the fool and get that fish around his neck before I come up there and batter some sense into you with it." As Gurrid bent to pick the fish up, Grum fitted a sizable rock into the spoon of his ladle and whipped it off in the direction of the rat's bent bottom. Thwump! It struck hard and true, knocking Gurrid from the wall top. He plummeted over and landed with a sickening thud in the courtyard below. Badrang leapt forward, sword in paw, waving at the creatures around him. "To the wall top, quick! Some beast's hurling rocks!" They piled up the broad wooden ladders on the wall top. Rotnose and Hisk were the first up. They were immediately hit by flying stones. Hisk fell senseless. Rotnose crouched, massaging his aching breastbone. Badrang crouched, massaging an aching breastbone. Badrang ducked another salvo as he went into a half-stoop, shouting at the others, "Where are the stones coming from? Can you see?" Skullrag stood upright, peering at the seemingly deserted shore. "Must be some beast hiding out there, Lord." Below, at the corner of the courtyard where the slaves were grouped, the big squirrel, Feldo, decided to take part in the action. He ducked to the back of the crowd, picking up several large pebbles as he went. With energy born of anger, he chucked a large rough stone at the back of Skullrag's head. Many times Feldo had bent under Skullrag's rod. Now was the chance to repay the sadistic fox. The flying rock did not strike Skullrag's skull. It narrowly missed, but took half his left ear in the process, ripping it off as it whizzed by. Feldo immediately flung 2 more stones, then, keeping his paws at his sides, gazed around in amazement, as if some other creature were doing the throwing. As Skullrag screeched in pain, Stiffier sprang up, pointing down into the courtyard as he shouted excitedly, "The stones are coming from inside our own fortress!" Thwack! A stone from the shoreside struck him square in the back. Rotnosed, still rubbing his chest, sneered at Stiffier. "Rubbish, they're coming from shore, I tell you. I was hit myself. Yow!" A stone from the courtyard stung his tail. Confusion reigned on the wall top. Badrang and his creatures did not know which side the missiles were coming from. The tyrant lay flat and raised his head slightly. He could not see the shore clearly, but he had an uninterrupted view of the sea. His stomach churned suddenly, and he began to curse at the sight his sharp eyes rested on. One more quick look to ascertain that he was not wrong sent Badrang scrambling for the ladder, calling hoarsely as he went, "Cut the mouse down from there and bring him with you. Get into the fortress, quick!" "But sire, we think there's some beast behind the rock slinging stones." Badrang shot a venomous glance at Rotnose as he hissed, "Do as I say, scumbrain. We've more to worry about than a few stones. Captain Clog's out there with the sea scarab sailing on a direct course for us." Grum was running out of good rocks to fit his ladle when Rose pointed to the wall. "Look, they've had enough. They're cutting Martin loose and retreating into the fortress. Thank the seasons that we were able to help that poor mouse, eh, Grum?" The mole mopped his brow and sat with his back against the rocks of their hideout on the beach in the hot mid-morning sunlight.
"Your boyoki unserpently gave thy vermin summat to think about. I gave him billiol with me ladler, her."
Rose could not help grinning at her faithful companion. "So you did, Grum. That ladle comes in useful for other things than stirring soup with." But Grum was not listening. Facing seaward, he was pointing straight out at the sea scarab, which was drawing closer by the moment.
"Look at Mizzy, sea ratters and vermins, I'll be boundin'."
A chill of fear ran through the mousemaid. Corsairs! They had seldom visited this coast, but the tales of horror and death that surrounded the raiders from the sea were legendary. Hastily, they gathered their few belongings. "Let's not hang out here, Grum. Come on, we'll lie low in the marshes behind the fortress." Captain Clog was in high villainous humor. He cut an awkward jig, his clogs clattering noisily on the poop deck.
"I recognizes the flag flying over yon place ashore. Oh, lucky day. I knowed it. I could feel it in me clogs. That's me messmate of bygone seasons, Badrang. Built hisself a stone castle, pretty as you please. How many poor little slaves would you say it took to work on a place like that, Crosstooth?"
A wicked-looking fox, draped in purple bandanas, scratched his chin. "I'd say lots, Captain."
"Lots and crowds?"
"Aye, lots and crowds."
Which is most, Crosstooth, lots or crowds?
Why, bless your heart, Captain, crowds. That means lots and lots.
Ha ha! Well said, matey. Break out the weapons while I lace plans for a reunion party with me old messmate, Badrang.
Martin stood, swaying on swollen footpaws, his arms still bound. Badrang sat upon his throne chair, eyes narrowed as he watched the reprieved prisoner.
Like I said before, you're not short of nerve, Martin. Hearken to me now. I could use a creature like you.
From beneath hooded eyelids, Martin watched the tyrant as he spoke, the young mouse's gorge beginning to rise at the stoat's proposal.
How would you like to be a captain in my horde? The best of food, slaves to command as you please. I'll even give you a spear to carry if you swear loyalty to me as your master. Well, what have you got to say to that, young'un?
Martin made no reply. His paws were deadened by the tight bonds, but his rage was aroused, and his jaws rang, setting his teeth into... and his jaws were strong. He launched himself in a flash upon Badrang, setting his teeth into the stoat's outstretched paw and biting it savagely to the bone. The tyrant roared and bellowed in agony as Martin was set upon by guards, his jaws prized apart with a dagger blade as rods and spear butts beat furiously at him. The young mouse went down on the ground as Badrang sprinkled blood about, shaking his paw in anguish as he gritted from between clenched teeth.
You'll wish the gannets had got to you by the time I finish with you, whelp. Oh, don't worry, you'll die, but not fast. Fraction by fraction until you scream to welcome death. Take him away and lock him up. I'll see to him when I'm rid of Clog.
Inside the courtyard, slightly to the left of the main gate, was a prison pit, dug deep into the ground, with a heavy grating on top. The cover creaked as it was slid to one side. Martin was hurled in, still with both paws bound to his sides. He fell through the darkness and landed with a cushioned thump on something soft. There was a grunt, and some beast was helping him upright, whilst another untied his bonds. A gruff voice spoke.
Martin, well, at least you're still alive. I'm Feldo, the squirrel.
The young mouse rubbed his paws, grimacing as the blood began circulating properly. The squirrel rubbed and patted him until he felt able to move easily again. Martin recognized him. He knew Feldo as a kindred spirit, another born rebel who had fallen foul of the vermin regime's justice. Feldo, what are you doing down here?
Awaiting the tyrant's pleasure like you, Martin. That rotten toad Stiffier saw me flinging rocks at him while he was on the wall top. Still, you saved my old dad, and I did what I could for you, matey.
Martin grasped the big squirrel's paw in the darkness. You are a true friend, Feldo. Thank you. They both sat on the hard-packed earth floor. There was a movement to Martin's right as he tensed, a small quiet voice echoed hollowly in the pit. What do you suppose Badrang's going to do with us? Martin peered into the dimness. Who's there? Feldo reached out and brought their paws together. Martin, this young feller was here before I arrived. Meet Brome. So, Brome, said Martin. He was younger and smaller than Martin and Feldo, and his voice sounded tiny and frightened. I never did harm to any beast. I was lost and blundering along the shore one night when the sentries on the wall saw me, and I was captured and thrown down here. Did they capture you, Martin? Will they keep us down here forever? Patting his paw and ruffling his ears good-naturedly, Martin reassured the youngster. You stick with us, Brome. We'll get you out of here. While I was staked out on that wall top, Feldo was throwing rocks from inside, and your sister Rose chucking them from outside. She's out there with a mole named Grum. I owe them my life. Brome grasped Martin's paw. Rose and Grum. Ha, good old Grum. I knew they'd find me. With those two out there, and you and Feldo in here, we'll escape easily. It'll be as simple as picking daisies. The joy and relief in the young one's voice was so evident that Martin felt a wave of sympathy for him. Nudging Feldo in the darkness, Martin spoke, with a confidence he did not feel. "Ah, as simple as picking daisies, eh, Feldo?" The squirrel was a kindly beast. He threw his paws about both of them, playing along with Martin's bravado. "Right, lads, 3 warriors like us and extra help from outside. The only thing Badrang will eat for dinner will be our dust when we scoot out of here. Friends together." Shortly after that, Brome fell asleep, cushioned between Martin and Feldo. Their eyes now accustomed to the gloom, they sat, staring at each other. "Easy as picking daisies. When was the last time you picked daisies, matey?" "A long time ago, friend Feldo. Some of them were pretty tough to pick as I remember, but not impossible." "Aye, and with a little outside help, we might stand a chance." Martin yawned and settled down beside Brome. "Sleep first. Being tied out on a wall top in a storm isn't the most restful place around here. We'll think of something later, friend. We can't disappoint this young'un." Feldo sat listening to the soft snores of his companions. "Oh yes, let's think of something later," he chuckled lightly to himself. "How to sprout wings and defeat Badrang and his horde with outside help from a mole and a mousemaid? By my brush, why didn't I think of those 2 good ideas before?" And that is the end of Chapter 3 of Martin the Warrior. We'll put our bookmark back in, and we will continue next time. I like to remind people that if you enjoy what you hear in this video, go pick up the book. It's a great read, as are all the Redwall books. They are for young adults, but they're appealing to the big kid in all of us as well, I think. They're just good adventures. And there's also a great audiobook available for Martin the Warrior and many other Redwall books, voiced by professional actors who do an excellent job. So thank you very much for listening to our soft-spoken reading of Martin the Warrior. I look forward to seeing you here next time, and when we do Chapter 4 of Martin the Warrior by Brian Jacques.